T minus 3, 2, 1, ignition.
But you know about this life, yeah. Just relax, baby, get high, yeah. You're on your way to the best night ever. No top on, no top.
What's up, guys? This is your Week 10 recap and Week 11 initial playoff preview. Let's go ahead and dive into the Week 10 matchups. First, let's start with Ass Kickers United versus Privileged Little Bitch. Me versus Thomas. I had the high score this week with 158.66. Fun fact, since we started doing the high score payouts, this is my first time ever winning. It has been a very rough couple of years since we started doing this, a couple of regular seasons for me, killed with injuries, but Week 10 was my fucking week. So thank you to everybody else's teams for doing terribly, but I will take it. Big reason why my team succeeded was my quarterbacks. Big Ben, Tom Brady, the old guys really came through for me. Roethlisberger with 32, Brady with 34. That was really the biggest chunk. Then Kamara went off 3 touchdowns. He had 31 points. Everyone else just did all right. Gronk getting a touchdown really helped. My Titans really fucked me with getting -3 points. Actually, if I would have just not played a defense, I'm pretty sure that I would have outscored Michael and then gotten the 5 seed instead of the 6. So that blows. But not so bad. Thomas's team honestly had a really down week, but still scored a decent amount of points. Kyler Murray is just insane right now. He's vulturing all of the rushing touchdowns. So good luck to anybody who has a Cardinals running back. Herbert did decent, 19 points. If he can get that pretty consistently, so really no worries there. And Thomas's team is stacked. They had a mediocre week, but any week they could go off for a ton of points. So, but that was final score 158 to 121, with me prevailing as the winner. Next matchup, we got Nick Finley versus Jacob. Surprisingly down week for Nick Finley. He was able to pull off the win just because this was a tough matchup, a low-scoring affair. Russell Wilson really shitting the bed this whole game. Only 6.9 points. Really terrible. But even without that, Aaron Rodgers kind of helped carry. James Robinson has been huge this whole year. And having Nick Chubb back. The fact that they're going to give Nick Chubb this many carries right off of, an injury is a really good sign for Nick's team. I thought it'd be just kind of a gray area of what they would do with Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb, but they gave them both 19 carries, so you might even be able to just play them both. Plus, he had DeAndre Swift on his bench who had 23, so Nick Finley's running backs could be pretty stacked going into the playoffs. But yeah, most of these two teams were pretty mediocre. Deshaun Watson for Jacob's team had a mediocre game, only 14 points. With Cleveland, you'd think that'd be a better matchup, but it just wasn't this game because Houston is just a shit show. Jake Luton, unfortunately, could not prevail for Jacob. Go Beavs, but he had just a sad 7.76 points. Dalvin Cook, they gave him the ball 34 fucking times. And he was still able to get 12.2 points despite Chicago's stout defense. And everybody else, just a pretty mediocre day all across the board. So final score for Nick Finley is 111 and then 93 for Jacob. Next matchup, we got Andrew versus Connor. Andrew's team just really shit the bed. Tannehill just had a pretty pathetic performance against the Colts, which they had a pretty good defense, but I'm still pretty surprised at the result. Tannehill only with 10. Tua had a pretty, low-key game. He only had 169 passing yards, but he ended up with 14 points, so just kind of, mediocre. Derrick Henry got the job done, just couldn't get in the end zone. Had a decent 14 points. Everybody else on Andrew's team had a pretty tough day. Connor's team, Jared Goff, mediocre. One fumble kind of screwed him out of having a decent game. Lamar Jackson finally had a decent game. But Lamar Jackson should be pretty hot going into the playoffs. Chase Edmonds, he is by far the most productive running back on that roster, but they just refuse to make him the starter because they just overpaid on Kenyon Drake, evidently. Something's happening with him, but their backfield is just a mystery because Edmonds had 8 carries for 56 yards, but whatever. Josh Jacobs, if Las Vegas ever gets in, if they ever get a big lead, Josh Jacobs is just going to go off because they will just continue feeding him the ball. He had 21 carries for 112 yards and 2 touchdowns. So look out for Josh Jacobs if the Raiders ever actually get a lead and the game script swings in Jacobs' favor. Allen Robinson, God, I was really hoping he would also have a shitty game because then I would have even leapfrogged him and Michael, but, fuck the Titans. I will never trust their defense again. A.J. Brown, just tough game. All of his receivers kind of had a tough game except for Juju. The Steelers just threw it all over the Bengals, so all of their receivers just kind of went off. Juju ended up with 9 catches, 77 yards, and a touchdown. Ryan Suckup for Connor had 16 points and a huge week from the kicker. But again, his team just had such a shitty week. They ended up losing by 47 points. Andrew had 80, Connor had 127. And then the last matchup of the week, Michael versus Bobby. Just kind of a couple mediocre days. Looking for Michael's team, Carson Wentz, just a terrible 6 points, even though he threw the ball 37 times. That's just how the Eagles have been this year. Carson Wentz has just had such a shit year, but every now and then he'll manage to, throw it all over some dipshit team. But he was held in check by the Giants. Cam Newton, I really was praying that he would fumble so that I could outscore Michael, but here we are. He had a decent game. That rushing touchdown saved him. Antonio Gibson, that backfield is kind of a mystery. Antonio Gibson, he had 2 touchdowns, but McKissick also had 2 touchdowns and a ton of targets. But Antonio Gibson's been pretty solid for Michael. And Stephon Diggs scoring 20 points is also solid. The Bills have been determined to, get their money's worth from Stephon Diggs, and it's really paid off fantasy-wise. So he's been killing it. For Bobby, really, we just saw Josh Allen. He had a great game. Bills should have won, but they got fucked on a Hail Mary by DeAndre Hopkins, who also had a great game. DeAndre Hopkins with 25 points, and Josh Allen had 24.86 points, which is pretty much the bulk of his scoring. Final score there, Michael losing to Bobby, 95 to 109. So that is everything for week 10. It was kind of a wild week in terms of just low scoring in general. I'm glad my team was able to pull it out and get out of the 7-seed pit that I was in. And with that, let's get into just these matchups. Let's talk about what's going on, kind of the main storylines for these 2-week playoff matchups starting week 11. Let's go ahead and start with my matchup, me versus Jacob. The main storylines kind of being this. Our teams basically get carried by our star running backs. So it's big thing, Dalvin Cook versus Alvin Kamara. Who's going to show up? Who is going to be able to carry their team? Week 11 is a huge week. One, because Dalvin Cook plays Dallas. And if the Vikings, follow the trend that they've been doing for the last few weeks, Dalvin Cook might have 50 carries. He might just run all fucking day all over a shitty Dallas defense. So he could get 100 points this 1 week. Really hope that doesn't happen. But Dalvin Cook is a beast, and he just has proven that he can't be stopped. And the Vikings have proven they'll give him the ball pretty much no matter what, because Kirk Cousins sucks. But Kamara, he's always a threat if he's on the field, because he's a threat in rushing or receiving. And he, just like last week, any given week he could score 3 touchdowns. So that's a big matchup to watch. Next big story, can my old quarterbacks keep up with Jacob's young stud quarterbacks? Roethlisberger, week 11, he's got a great matchup against Jacksonville. They should throw the ball a lot, but he's also kind of an old fat bitch, so we don't really know how he's going to react. Tom Brady, pretty boy bitch also. he was terrible against New Orleans, getting me negative points, but he can also get you 30 points or 40 points. So it's what Tom Brady we're going to get. He's playing the LA Rams this week, so that's going to be a tough matchup. As far as Jacobs quarterbacks, basically any week, both of them could go off. Mahomes has an awesome matchup this week with Las Vegas, and Watson's playing New England. So honestly, it's a toss-up. Hopefully, the old guns can kind of just do well enough, because I think Mahomes is just going to have a crazy week, unless they end up just running the ball all the time. But always a toss-up, see how these things go. Another interesting thing is consider this the Kenyon Drake Revenge series. I traded Kenyon Drake to Jacob kind of mid-season, and here we are meeting in the playoffs. Kenyon Drake has a decent matchup, playing Thursday night against Seattle. What Kenyon Drake are we even going to get? Are we going to get, the 20 carries for 100 yards? Are we going to get, the 10 carries for 40 yards and no touchdowns? It's just, you never know. And we'll see if Kenyon Drake just tries especially to, get revenge on the team that drafted him. I used my first round pick on him, and it basically ruined me. So I hope this does not come back to bite me in the ass, but that it will be a story to watch. And so next matchup we'll look at Michael versus Connor. So to me, I think the biggest thing that's going on in this matchup is the fact that Connor's quarterbacks have great matchups, basically throughout the whole playoffs. Joe Burrow is playing Washington this Sunday, and honestly, Washington has a good pass defense, but Bengals versus the former Redskins is sure to actually be a pretty high-flying matchup, unless the Redskins just decide to just run the ball, try to control the clock. But I think there's going to be a lot of scoring. Burrow's going to have a lot of opportunities to score points. Lamar Jackson, they play the Titans, and the Titans got destroyed by the Colts the other day. So Lamar Jackson, he could go off for a ton of points. So I think that's going to be a big story, is how well Connor's quarterbacks do. And on the flip side is Michael's kind of ragtag group of quarterbacks. Can he play the right guys on the right days? In his starting lineup right now, he's got Carson Wentz and Cam Newton. They both have decent matchups this week, so he could very well play those guys. But they have both been big question marks. They might, get almost 30 points, or they could score single digits. Those offenses have just not been trustworthy. But he also has Kirk Cousins on his bench. He plays Dallas, and he has Matthew Stafford. So we'll kind of just have to see what quarterbacks he uses. But really, the story is just can he start the right ones on the right days? And then looking at just Michael's running backs, or the story that a tale of two teams with how their running backs are going. Connor kind of has the young studs. He's got Josh Jacobs, who's going to be very consistent. The Raiders are committed to getting him the ball. But what's going to happen with Clyde Edwards-Helaire? Is he going to, get the ball a lot? Le'Veon Bell has been on their team for a while, so is he going to get more carries? This should be a positive game script for Edwards-Helaire. So in Week 11, I would imagine he has a decent game. Looking at Michael's team, is Damian Harris going to have another big game, or are they going to give it to Rex Burkhead for some reason? Antonio Gibson should be a pretty solid pick because they're committed to giving him the ball. But what is he going to do with, a Tampa Bay running back? Is he going to play them? Is he going to not play them? What do you even do? Ronald Jones has shown you that he can go off for 180 yards, or they'll give Leonard Fournette the ball 15 times and nothing will really happen fantasy-wise. So a lot of question marks, a lot of stories with this matchup. But let's move on to the 1 seed versus the 8 seed. So this will be Nick Finley versus Andrew. So Andrew's team has been the ultimate boom or bust all year. Some injuries have killed him. It's been a very unpredictable injury season. It's been very shitty. But Andrew's team, after all the trades he's made, it has potential to get a ton of points. Like when he beat me by over 100, because my team was terrible that week, but he scored like 170 points. So his team has, boom potential. But I think it's going to come down to just are his quarterbacks going to perform? Because Matt Ryan and the Falcons have been incredibly unpredictable and just inconsistent. You know, can Tua put up big numbers, or is he just more of kind of a conservative guy? Derrick Henry, he's always a threat to get 30 carries, and any given play he could score a touchdown, which he's shown. So he's always a threat to get points. You know, is Chris Carson even going to play? DK Metcalf, you know, is last time they played Arizona, he got shut down. So what's going to happen there? Mike Evans, is he going to get touchdowns this week, or is he not? So his whole lineup basically screams they could get 30 points or they could get single digits. So this week 11 is going to be really big. Whereas Nick Finley's team, I think it's going to be able, you know, Finley's team is going to go as far as his quarterbacks will take him. Because I think that's what separates his team from everybody else's, which is the consistency of Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers has been, you know, we knew Russell Wilson was going to be awesome this season, but Aaron Rodgers has been a pretty big surprise just in terms of how good he's been. And he's been incredibly consistent. Both quarterbacks have been, and each of them have really only had like one bad week. So it'll kind of be up to those guys. If they each, you know, get 20 plus points or even more, I think Finley's going to be really hard to beat because the rest of, you know, his running backs are very consistent. Travis Kelce has been amazing this whole season. The only question mark for Nick Finley is his wide receivers. Tyler Lockett, last time he played the Cardinals, he had 50 points. So obviously Lockett has huge potential, but he's questionable, so he might not even play. Also, just Lockett has potential like anybody else to get shut down and, you know, have a shitty week. But the rest of his receivers, Jerry Jeudy, just Denver in general has been awful, so you can't really trust any of their players on a week-by-week basis. And then there's just not a ton of depth at wide receiver, especially with Calvin Ridley. He might not even play. But if he comes back, that'll be pretty big for Nick Finn. But, you know, it's a good matchup because Andrew his team does have the potential to score a shit ton of points. So you never know what'll happen. Even though Nick Finley's team has just been consistently dominant all year. And moving on to the last matchup, we got Bobby versus Thomas. Bobby's team, it is tough looking at starting quarterbacks in the playoffs when you have Derek Carr and Andy Dalton. Andy Dalton, I hope he starts and is healthy and, you know, can perform against a pretty bad Minnesota Vikings defense. That would be huge, but not having Josh Allen on a bye really fucks Bobby. But he at least has a positive matchup, so we'll see how that goes. Because he's going to need every bit of help against Thomas's team. Thomas's team is just, you can't find one position that is bad. I mean, tight end, everyone's pretty bad at tight end because it's just been, if you don't have Travis Kelce, it's been awful for everybody. But with Kyler Murray, he's a threat to score 30 any week. Herbert's been really consistently good. Aaron Jones I feel like he just hasn't been 100% healthy the last few weeks, so he's just been kind of, you know, good but not great. But he's always a threat to get 3 touchdowns any given game. Miles Sanders, he's really good, but the Eagles just kind of suck, so we'll kind of have to see. But basically, top to bottom, Tiva is just loaded, so it's going to be tough for Bobby to overcome that. But Bobby does have a ton of potential in guys like DeAndre Hopkins, Mark Andrews, if that connection ever happens. Julio Jones could have a big week, and it's just the big question mark of Bobby's quarterbacks, which is sad to see just because of where he started with Dak and Josh Allen just going crazy. But he'll have Allen back for week 12. So I think that'll be the big story. Can Bobby just not get down by too much during this week 11 when he doesn't have Josh Allen? All right, gang. That is everything I have for you today. Want to wish everybody good luck with this first round playoff matchup because you never know what the fuck is going to happen. Anybody can get hurt at any given moment. Nobody is safe. And I think everybody right now has a chance to win because anybody's team has the potential to score a lot of points. So with that, I will leave you and talk to all you guys later.